Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race. We are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 284 of the Running for Real podcast. How are we already coming up on 300? Feels like we were just doing 200. And I am excited today to share with you. I know all of our conversations here are very real and there's a lot of vulnerability shared on this show, but this conversation was very different in that my guest and I talked about a lot of things that aren't talked about ever, really, but they're very prominent and they're obviously just our experiences. But I think it is a real insight into the world of elite running, but also into your own running and how you see yourself and how we feel that the world sees us. So I am excited to welcome on Brittany Charboneau to our show. Now, Brittany has some very impressive PRs of 2:33 in the marathon, 1:13 in the half, 34 minutes in the 10K, and a 3:35 in the marathon. She recently won the Dopey challenge, which is winning a 5K, 10K, half marathon, and marathon consecutively on consecutive days for the Disney World Dopey Challenge, which you will hear us talk about that. She also finished 13th overall in the US Olympic team trials. And she is known for being the fun runner, the person who has fun. I've really admired her for that, but you will also hear me be a bit vulnerable that I didn't always admire her for that. And as much as I feel a little bit embarrassed to say that now that I felt that way, I think you'll hear us process this and see maybe why that was the case. And that said, she's known as this fun, happy, loving life runner, but it's not always the case. So I think this episode will really shed some light on a lot of things. It was a really vulnerable and raw conversation, and I'm really excited for us to dive in and meet Brittany. So let's hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right to this episode with Brittany. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, friends, as of January 8th, we are well within at this point, 100 days to Boston. I will be running Boston as a guide with Kyle Robidoux, who you heard me have on the show late last year. And Boston is, for Tracksmith in particular, but for many runners, one of their favorite events of the year. Boston represents the best of the amateur spirit, inspiring runners of all levels to chase those BQ standards. And the 26.2 miles from Hopkinton to Boston offers challenges and transcendence. So you can join Tracksmith and myself to count down to one of the favorite races of the year. Tracksmith will be hosting winter Sunday morning long runs from their track house if you are in Boston and training for either that marathon or another marathon. So they are hoping that you will go join them for some miles if you are around there. There will be lots of cool stuff going on for those events. And Tracksmith is the clothes are the clothes that I run in, day out. I wear day in, day out for my leisure wear, for my active wear, for running, for lounging around. There are so many options and so many things that I have enjoyed with Tracksmith, just in a comfort level, particularly in the winter. That is really where they shine. I've mentioned many times that the Brighton base tank is one of my favorite options that I wear just as a general shirt, but then I also wear it for many of my runs. And I also love the Harrier tank. That is another one. I just had a friend this morning actually text me to say that she was loving her new turnover tights. They were really warm and really comfortable. I'm constantly getting messages like that from people saying how much you are enjoying Tracksmith items. And friends, you as a friend of my podcast, you will be able to get something very special, an offer that is just available for Running for Real listeners. And that is that you are able to give 5% of all money spent on sales is going to go to Runners for Public Lands, which is a 501c3 non-profit environmental organization dedicated to environmental justice, advocacy, and conservation. Now, if you use code TINA15, you will participate in that, and you will also receive free shipping as just a little bonus. That's your way to give back. If you go to treksmith.com/collections/running-for-real, there's also a link in the show notes. You can go check out some of my favorite items, including the session pants, which are my comfortable sweatpants, that Brighton base that I mentioned earlier, and my favorite sports bra. So Treksmith has all the things that are going to keep you motivated. They're also well into their No Days Off campaign, which you can read more about there. But they also have the most comfortable running clothes. So go check those out at treksmith.com and be sure to use code TINA15 to give that 5% of sales to Runners for Public Lands. Brittany, long overdue, but I'm excited that you're here on the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh man, yeah. We were just talking about how I was like, I'm stoked to talk to you finally.
Yes, I know. It has been a long time coming. And there's quite often a situation like this where I have someone who I've been following along with for years, or I've been kind of in communication for years, but we've never actually done a podcast. And when it happens, I kind of feel a little bit embarrassed because I'm like, oh, I should have done this a long time ago. But with you in particular, it felt like every time I was going to reach out to you, it was like there was this media swirl going around you. And I really try and not be following the news. So then I'd be like, oh, I'll put that in my pocket for another time. And then I'd come back and then it just would leave my mind. But this time I just couldn't. I was like, this has got to be it, because as of us recording this just a few days ago, you just did something really special, something that is also on my bucket list, but maybe not quite as quick as you did it. You did the Dopey challenge at Disney World. Are you still there right now in Florida?
No, I just got home on Tuesday, so a couple days ago.
Okay. Oh, it was Tuesday. Oh, so you would have had Monday in the parks. Okay. So for people listening, many of them would have known that I did the Disney World half, but they might think, well, what does Dopey challenge mean? I mean, people who love Disney World and love that stuff know, but for anyone who doesn't, what is the Dopey challenge?
The Dopey challenge is exactly as it sounds. It's so dumb what you do. So the Dopey challenge is 4 consecutive days of racing, starts with the 5K, 10K, half marathon, and then finishes with the full marathon. And as we were just chatting before this, they all start at 5 a.m. Eastern time. So by that last day of the marathon, you are feeling a little bit dopey. You're like, what am I doing? Waking up for the 4th consecutive day in a row at 3 a.m. to go run a marathon. But yes, it's been a big, they've had it for years now, this Dopey challenge, and people love it. They have this whole big challenge, and it's just getting to run all 4 distances across all 4 different days.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't just run it. Do you want to say what did happen?
Yeah, I won all of them. I won every single race. It's never been done, male or female, ever. So, yeah.
Had anyone done 3 of the 4?
I don't think so. I hadn't heard any of that. I don't think so. I bet you someone's done 2 or something. That's a good question. I'll have to ask. But no, I don't think anybody has even done 3.
Yeah. Look, when I ran it in 2019, the woman who was there said she'd won the 2 the day before, and she was trying to win the 3rd, but I didn't let that happen. Not intentionally against her. I just that was my first race postpartum, and I was like, I'm going to do my best, whatever that is. But I was curious with that. I'd imagine that people have tried, but yeah, I mean, and you crushed it as well. Like, it wasn't like it was a slow year and you barely squeaked the win for each of them and ran slow. Like, it was impressive what you did there. And so, it was really cool. And I'd love for you to share the outfits that you wore for each of them, which was, something important to you and relates to what we'll talk about later.
Yeah, it's actually funny that you mentioned, thank you for saying that I crushed it, because I was a little bit nervous going into some of these races because I was like, and you'll understand this, I was like, I know my times are probably, this is my cat, I got to get him. I know my times are not going to be as fast as I possibly could run. And are people going to think that I sandbagged it or things like that? So I had to kind of mentally prep myself for that, of like, well, clearly, like, my marathon time isn't going to be my PR. These races aren't going to be my PRs. I can run faster. But hoping that people weren't thinking that I just squeaked by or whatever. So that was a piece. But the beauty of this whole race experience was I got to do exactly what I wanted to, which was race in costume. So for each race, when I had pitched this idea to my coach of like, this is what I want to do to kick off my year. I love Disney. I raced in 2018 there, and this is something I really want to do. I kind of just told her my why behind it. And it's just about keeping the joy and the fun with all of it. And she said, I support you as long as you up your costume game. And I was like, done. So that was my whole goal. So for the 5K, I was Elsa from Frozen 2, specifically from Frozen 2. And then the second day I was Bing Bong from the movie Inside Out, which is he's not a very super well-known character. So he was the imaginary friend of the main character in that movie. And he was this cotton candy pink elephant. And then for the half marathon, I was Joy from Inside Out. And then the last day I kicked it off with, I was Cruella from the new version of Cruella with Emma Stone. So I've raced in costume every day at the races, and it was amazing.
Yeah, I love that you did that. And we'll talk about why you did choose that thing, and why it was a silver lining from a really tough situation. And I think a lot of people can take lessons from that. A lot of the theme of this episode is very much going to be about joy and finding fun in things, especially as runners in general take it seriously, but at someone who is at your level, or what I used to be, especially so. With those Disney races going into it, I just want to add some context for the listeners that people like Brittany or myself, when we would have gone into races, you're used to kind of being pampered and taken off on an elite bus, and you know who's at the race, you know kind of where you stand, you get dropped off right before you go. With Disney World, it's not like that. Do you want to like share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a different experience. I think I lucked out in that.
Unless you did have a different experience. I definitely didn't.
I did get a little bit of a bougie treatment. I had been there before. They were so amazing for me, and we just kind of had our connection there, that he was able to help get me to the starting line and pick me up and stuff like that. So, but I certainly
didn't have to walk through like 1 mile, like
no,
get there, which took me when
we had to park far away on some days. So we did have that like long walk. So you walk a good mile through the park to get to your corrals, and then you just hang out in your corrals. I mean, that was something I distinctly remember from 2018 when I raced there. It was like standing in those corrals and being like, this is insane. So my like heart goes out to everybody that had to do that. It was like, I totally can understand. But you know what was cool about this one? So I started running trail over the past couple of years after trials. And what I love about the trail scene is it's not this big hype before the races. Like, it isn't this, I feel like it just amps you up so much more when you have these gigantic starting lines and you're getting announced at the starting line and all of these different factors at trail. If the race is at 8 a.m., you show up at about 7:58 and you just kind of like scoot your way to the front with everybody. And that was kind of how this was. I mean, there are corrals in the Disney races, of course, but it's kind of like, I kind of feel like it's just that same vibe and flair versus a whole pack of elites that you're just like, you feel like these like bloodthirsty like animals all together, like getting ready to hunt.
Yes.
It certainly wasn't that.
Yeah, and I thank you for sharing that and your honesty with, maybe there were a few small changes, but I say that with the listeners. I know that that is your experience every single time, having to walk a while and stand there for half an hour. But I specifically remember for me, it was quite jarring to be used to, and I understand the privilege there, used to being, right at the front, just being taken in at the last minute and standing there for 25 minutes, just being cold.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, I love that you chose this as your race. And as I said earlier, there was a reason you chose this as your race, because something happened to you in late 2021. And it's a good example of where things happen and runners can easily spin out of confidence and be like, oh, of course this happened to me. What is wrong? Why did this happen to me? Blah, blah, blah. Something happened to you, but you decided to not let that be the end of your story. So what happened there?
Yeah. So I was training for Boston this past fall, since Boston was held in the fall of 2021. And in my head, I was like, this is going to be I had to prove that I was going to still be fast on road, because I hadn't raced road since trials in 2020. I had just been hitting the trails. And so in my head, underlying everything, kind of everything I was doing at that time, I just had in my head this piece of I have to prove that I'm still fast to be taken legitimately, which that's a whole nother rabbit hole of things. But underlying that was kind of the thinking I had this whole time during training for Boston. And I was crushing my Boston training. I was having some of my fastest workouts, and I was feeling really fit. And so 10 days before the race, I was in a park that I do all my speed workouts in. I've been doing them since before I was racing elite, and randomly on a mile repeat that I was doing, I just nailed this off-leash dog, came out of nowhere at full speed and collided, T-boned me and knocked me down. I slammed into the ground, slammed my back, hit my head. Needless to say, that workout was over, which I was so bummed, because it was one of my fastest workouts I'd ever had. And it was 10 days before the race, and I was like, what am I going to do? Because I had a concussion. It messed up my back, all of those things. And so I took a couple of days off. And then from that week leading up to Boston, my back just still wasn't in a good spot. But it was just I'm going to power through. It's Boston. I'm racing elite at Boston. I don't care if I'm hobbling, I'm going to make it. I know once I get running, I'll be fine. But I wasn't. I remember warming up right before we got to the starting line at Boston. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I don't care. I'm going to do it. So was on the starting line at Boston, started to get through, was in the lead pack for a while. And then just nothing felt good about that race. And just started to my back just started to really, really start to bother me as I kept going. Finally, I think it was mile 15, I started walking and then crying on the side of the road. I'm just going to get to the next aid station. I don't know what I was thinking, if I was thinking I would actually finish the race. But so I ended up having to pull out at mile 18. And that was kind of after that, took a week or so off of that after Boston, and just kind of started to reflect. And I was just thinking, well, I still have all my Boston fitness, but how can I just use it and use it more fun? I mean, injury aside, everything, it's just, I felt like everything was really intense, and I wasn't doing it my way. I wasn't enjoying it as much as I could have. And so it was just as my coach and I just got to chatting, what do I want to do that's going to bring me joy? What's going to be, how can I still use this fitness, but how can I just go play and kick off the year in a different way? Because my 2021 ended this way. How can I kick off 2022? And I'm such a big believer of, everything happens for a reason. And hindsight, you get so many golden nuggets of things that you're like, oh, you are on the right path. And so I was looking back, and in fact, my husband and I were chatting about this during this past weekend at Disney. And I was like, you know what? On that day that I collided with a dog, I have different themes that I do during my training. And that theme day specifically was Disney Day. And I had my Disney shirt from 2018 on. I was listening to Disney songs on my workout, and that happened. And so looking back, it was Oh, that was just that way of putting me, I take it as it was putting me on my right path.
Yes.
Because if I had run Boston, I would never have run Disney. Like there would have been no reason for me to do that. I maybe would have chosen to run Boston again in the spring or another road race or something in the spring. So I kind of like use that as like, okay, just trust these moments that even when it gets something crappy happens, that if you give it time and if you just keep listening to those little whispers or your gut, I promise something will come out of it. If you just can kind of, for me, it's being patient and just knowing like, you might not know why right now, but this is putting you on a different path that you're actually probably supposed to be on that's more fulfilling for you.
100%. I could not agree more. And I see things exactly the same way. And there's so many moments when they happen, be it running or not, like anything in life, when, you know, you're fine, you're doing great, everything's okay. You know, yes, some things are coming up that in life that aren't ideal, but you're kind of getting along with it. And then one thing happens and it like smacks you in the face and you just feel like for me, at least, I feel like pulled down like really low. And all of a sudden I'm like low. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Why, you know, it's always that like pity of like, why is the world against me?
Yeah.
And but then, like you said, you get that little whisper and you're just like kind of saying like, just trust. And then sure enough, very quickly, something comes back and you're like, oh, yeah, that was it. So I love that Disney was that thing for you. And I think we've got to talk here about hearing you say that, you know, the fact that you were kind of doing Boston to prove yourself, to prove that you were still fast, that you have a North Face sponsorship. And we'll go on to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But you're sponsored by North Face. There is a lot of pressure. I've talked a lot on this show about how there's a lot of competition between, it's not said competition, but there's only very few sponsor spots. And so everyone knows they are coveted and everyone wants them. And every time someone runs fast, like out of nowhere, there's these Runner's World articles that say, why isn't da-da-da sponsored? And everyone's aware, like if they're sponsored, that takes another one out of the picture. And so there's a lot of like pressure. And like you said, just feeling of like, I've got to keep proving myself. And you were headed down by that Boston. And as you said, you probably would have done the next Boston back down that path of, I gotta, you know, do what everyone else is doing. And you specifically have been known to kind of, you're carving your own path. And it's one of the things that people love about you the most, but you were carving your own path. But even you were getting sucked back in. And I had a very similar experience in that I was like, on the path. I did London. That was all about joy. Got off that path. Did a few races where I was in the joy. And then sure enough, I got sucked back into like, gotta get faster. And that's for me, what ultimately led to me quitting was I ended up hating it. Yeah. And so I think that's something that's not often talked about in the elite world. Like what the rest of the world sees is this intensity and this inspiration, but there's a heck of a lot of like turmoil going on within us underneath that you may say, I had a hard day, like I gritted my way through, or I was tough in this thing, but we don't often talk about the kind of insecurities that are going on underneath. So is there anything you'd add to that there?
Big time. Yeah. I'm like, as you're talking, I'm just nodding and I'm like, yep, me. I think you're right. Like, I think there is this piece of, so I went down that road of just intensity. I ran the 2019 Marine Corps Marathon. That was my marathon before trials in 2020. And it was miserable because I was so in my head because I was going to set this course record and this whole thing. And so that was another, I have lots of these moments, I'm sure we all do, of knocking me back on course. Like that was the last race right before trials that I like didn't enjoy it. I was so stressed out about this record. It was a miserable rainy day. And I was like, you know what? I've got trials coming up. And if I don't enjoy maybe my one time ever, hopefully more than once, but you never know if you get 2 trials every 4 years. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it, because like no one can take that away from that experience for me. And trials, I had a blast, loved it, because I covered my watch. Like it wasn't about the times. And as we say that, like we're like, it's, and as I'm talking and telling my story, I'm like, it's about the joy, it's about this. But at the end of the day, I love going fast, and I love proving to myself that, or like when you have a PR and you see your time and you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe I ran that fast. Like that pride for yourself, but it's that really, really fine balance of, I love working really hard, seeing it pay off, watching my times go down, and just like kind of blowing my own mind with these expectations. And for me, that's this like fine line, especially for me in the road world. It seems like that I am still trying to navigate and figure out that piece, because for Boston, it was like, yes, I would love to go fast. I've got my fitness. Like I could crush a PR. I'm ready. But I think I was channeling probably the wrong energy for it, of like, I had to, in my head, it wasn't the right intention. It was like, I have to prove it, because I think there's still this piece tied to times. I feel like it's like these times dictate your worthiness or whatever. And this is probably my own just insecurities. And we were chatting just before this, like I had to work so hard, I feel like in 2021 with imposter syndrome. Like I just felt like as the North Face sponsorship came up, which was incredible, I just was kind of questioning, like, do I deserve this? Like, why me? And like, there's a lot of other fast people. And was this a fluke? So I think there's all these pieces behind the scenes that I didn't know about when I started racing elite, and you're chasing down these big sponsorships or goals, or these bigger races that you're getting into, that you don't know the pieces that come with it, and some of this like pressure that can come with it. And it could just be your own pressure. For me, it's, no one's ever said you have to run this fast. There's nothing in like my contract that says you must race these races and place in these, like nothing says that. It's just this piece for me as a runner that comes layered on, that I put on myself. But I didn't know that those pressures would be part of the mix when I first started. No one really tells you that it's like, there are lots of roses, but there's a lot of weeds too that are part of this whole story and whole journey. So it's just interesting to navigate these different pieces. And then when you're like, I'm not having fun, I want to go race Disney, to just trust that it's going to be okay, or like, but there's no money on the line. Like I make $0 from this. Like I don't, like, what if I hadn't won all of these? Like, would anybody care? And I have to be like, fine with like, hell yeah, because this is my year, this is my career. And I went and just had a blast at Disney, and that's for me. But it's hard. I mean, there's just like so much to balance and navigate in this world. And it's fun. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm loving what I'm getting to do. But I mean, there's all these other pieces that come into play, just like any other quote unquote real job.
Our next partner has a product I use literally every day. I started taking athletic greens because I knew that I was making some, maybe not mistakes, but I wasn't getting all the nutritious elements that I wanted to and desired to, just as part of my lifestyle, and just from staying away from that obsessive compulsive lifestyle of obsessing over clean eating. I knew that I wasn't able to be perfect, and for my mental health, I needed to not obsess about that. And I knew athletic greens would fill in the gaps. I knew athletic greens would be that insurance policy for my body that made me know that every morning when I wake up, I can start my day by having that scoop of athletic greens within a glass of water. I can shake it up, I can drink it, and then I know that no matter what happens in the rest of the day, I have taken care of myself. It means you don't have to take 50 different vitamins, minerals, supplements separately. It's everything you need is in one place. I consume it, as I said, first thing in the morning. It is the first thing I do upon wake up, and I find that it helps my digestion, it helps my energy. It is made with 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, which is going to help you start your day right. That special blend supports gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy recovery, focus, aging, all the things, basically. It is lifestyle friendly, regardless of what diet you do or don't have. It is going to be good for you. It is enjoyable to drink. I have it every day and I love the taste of it at this point. And right now, it is difficult to reclaim your health, especially with all this messaging going on about changing the way that your body looks or changing who you are. You want to arm your immune system with a convenient daily nutrition solution, but without it being all this pressure of having to change who you are. This is cold and flu season, so it is especially important. So this one scoop of Athletic Greens in a cup of water is all you need. So to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go to athleticgreens.com/Tina. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/Tina. Go take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Definitely. And you mentioned there about the imposter syndrome, and specifically when it comes to proving yourself when there is sponsorship involved. We as runners, everyone listening can know the feeling of you go into a race, and whether it is your circle of family and friends, whether it is your running community, or for at the higher elite level, it's probably, people who follow you or are interested in your career. We all know how it feels like if you had a bad race, you're like, oh, everyone knows I failed, like I've let everyone down. And you feel like the whole world is walking around being like, God, what a piece of crap. Like she didn't even use that opportunity. Like she crumbled mentally. Like what is wrong with her? And I think part of that is we've watched or at least in England, I've grown up watching like soccer fans, like yelling at these players, like, you worthless piece of like the smallest mistakes. But I've watched it in track as well, where people have been like, why'd you make that move? And I'm like, that person has like a split second to make a decision what they're doing in this race, right? But I think we've grown up with that. But we all know that feeling of feeling like everyone is just obsessing and thinking about us all day long, when really, okay, for someone like you or I, it might be like, oof, she had a rough day. But then it's like on to the next thought. Yep. But with sponsorships, it can feel like the brands are sitting there in a room and they're like, okay, well, what is Brittany going to do today? Is she going to make us worth the money she just invested? Oh, it's been a few weeks since Brittany did anything that helped us, really. So whereas really the brands are just like, running around like on fire, like trying to put out their own like things that are going on, and you might pass through their mind a few times a year, like, or, maybe once a month or something. And so it can feel like a lot of pressure, like there is that proving. And as you said, there is very little money at that next level, down from the Sarah Halls and the Des and the Shalanes. There's very little money around. So it can feel like you better make your money, make it worth it when you have this. And there's also a shame around potentially being dropped. Like that would be the thing of like, well, I had, again, you would be thinking, well, I had this sponsorship and now everyone's going to be like, wow, that was a waste of money for them. Yeah. So those were just some of the things in my head and my experience, but some of those resonate with you as well.
And talking about like, the beauty of right now in women's distance running, it is blowing up. There's so much buzz around it, but everyone's getting faster. Everyone's like, it just seems like there's just such a giant pool. And so sometimes you feel like, well, like if it's not me, then like there's a whole list of other people that could take my spot or something like that. But I think something that, and we were again, like chatting offline about this piece a little bit, is like, hang on, like I remember that I've got more to offer as a person than just my times. And I hope like that kind of comes through for me. Like I have a lot more to offer as a person and what I can do versus just my times or just winning certain races and things like that. And that's something I have to really try to remember to remind myself, is that, people get invested in different athletes just for who they are. Like I know my favorite athletes just because like of who they are as a person. And you're right. Like if they have a bad race, it's like, yeah, but overall she's a badass and I think she's amazing and she's funny or something like that. And I have to remember that. But for me, I'm like, no, but I'm different. It doesn't count. Like people are going to be like, I genuinely thought when I was racing Boston, I was like, the cameras are going to be on me as I'm like sobbing on the sidelines. Like this is humiliating. Yeah. No one cares. Nobody. And you know what? People care. They reached out to ask how I was doing. They asked like, are you okay? They didn't ask like, what was wrong with you? North Face never once was like, you know, like, why didn't you finish? Why? Like nothing. It was like, how are you doing? It wasn't like this whole dramatic thing that I had played out in my head of this like big story of like, breaking news that I dropped out of Boston and all of these like things that we put in our head. And I had to think about that. So I was supposed to run the 2019 London Marathon and almost exact same back injury happened then, different circumstances. But I remember, so the marathon ran past our hotel right by the London Bridge. And I remember that morning I was like, I can't possibly go out and watch this. This is going to be too hard because I'm not racing today. This is going to be too hard for me and my spirit. And then I was like, get your butt outside and go cheer on like everybody that cheers you on. And the cool part was that was an aha moment for me because I remember thinking before that if I wasn't in the lead pack of all the other women, that it was going to be really embarrassing and people were going to feel bad for me. But when the lead pack ran by, and then all the other elites like way down the line ran by, I was like, you're amazing. Like people don't understand. You're still running very fast. You've still done all the work. And that was this like aha moment of like, oh, like people like, at least for me, like I still was like in awe of these other women who were completely ahead of the entire rest of the field. So it kind of takes those moments of like, oh, right. Like this isn't, and like at the end of the day, no one really cares that much about running. It's not like the NBA or like things like that. Like, I don't know. Let's all just kind of trying to keep it all in perspective, I think, which is easier said than done.
Absolutely. But I think it's interesting for people listening to hear some of the stuff going on underneath, because it's very easy, as you mentioned, you'll see those, you know, maybe not the lead pack, but the people at the front of the race and think like, wow, those people are like, you know, rock stars, like look at them go, and not realize there's a lot going on underneath there. And can I be honest for a minute? I mean, I am honest in general, but like really vulnerable here in that, like, I have to admit, like with you, I kind of struggled for a while when you were really coming up, because you, with the way that you approached your running and the fun that you had, even though like now I'm hearing that, you know, you still struggled with it, but it seemed like you were just like nailing having fun. You had this amazing female coach. You were just running fast and managing to just say like, put like essentially two fingers up at the like traditional way of running fast and having fun with it. And I was jealous of that because I was like, oh, like, how did I not figure that out before? Like, I was kind of mad at myself, and I don't want to say I resented you, but I struggled with the fact that you were able to get it in time of like, you were at the peak of your career. You were running faster, I actually think, because you were enjoying it. And I would imagine you probably feel the same way, that like, as we've been talking about, the intensity doesn't work for you and it didn't work for me. But there was a part of me that really struggled with like, damn, she's got it. She got it right. And I was mad at myself for not being able to do that and not being able to find that fun until, I know it's not too late right now, but I'm just not prepared to go back into that hole. Yeah. And if I've always said, if I was ever to go back to the elite world, it would have to be like falling into it almost, like with the fun kind of, you know, and very similar approach to what you were doing. And I know I didn't need to say that, but I just want to share with the audience that, like, you know, I still have a lot of my own insecurities, but even up to a few years ago, you like were the representative of what I kind of wish my elite career was. And so I really appreciate you sharing that, even though it looks like you're having fun, and you are most of the time, you're always finding that ways to keep joy. Even you still struggle sometimes and have to have that conversation in your head of like, hey, you got to keep this fun. Otherwise it's easy to slip down that path again. So thank you for sharing.
I really appreciate that you, number one, are like willing to say that, but also like of perception of, and that's a big piece too, is that I really want to make sure that people do understand that the basis of my running is joyful and fun. And there's a couple of components to that. I work really hard to try to make it that. Like it is an everyday effort that I have to be so intentional about. But genuinely, like I feel like it takes more work for me to really be honest and committed to the fun, because it's so easy to just get so intense. And the second that I slip, the second that I am like, no, I got this, like I'm fun, I'm the funny runner, I like always have fun, those thoughts of Boston creep back in, and I have to prove myself. And I like, so there's all these different layers of it. And maybe that's a good reminder of like, to me, like, don't forget to share the struggles of it sometimes too, because it's not been a like running on a rainbow and like I'm just shooting glitter out of like everywhere, and like I'm just like, this is so easy, like this is wonderful, and like
just have fun, and then you'll be great.
So easy. All you have to do is just enjoy your runs. And it's like, well, hang on a second. Like it was funny because I went to Broadway camp 2 weeks or like right before Christmas, and it was 9 to 6. It was an all day. It was a 5-day camp for adults, and it was from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every single day. And I was still training for Dopey, so I had to get up and get my runs in and my workouts in before camp. And it was that reminder of, oh yeah, like people have real jobs and they have this one window of time that they can get up and run. And let me tell you, that was a wake up call again of it's hard when that alarm goes off at 5:30 or 6 and you have to make the choice to put your shoes on and then go enjoy it. I get it. Like, I mean, right now I have the luxury of, I can dictate my runs around the weather. I can wait till it's sunshine and like beautiful to go for my run because I have, an open schedule because this is what I do. But, I think, yeah. It's like, if I'm like, no, this has been there's struggles with so many different pieces of, we could go down all the roads of, the intensity, and I'm intense, but it's like this layer of fun, but it has to be really, really intentional for me. And it takes I feel like it really does take a lot of work. I think if you think about an artist that as they're creating different pieces or something like that, like they're having to put a lot of intention and thought behind the pieces that they're creating. And I feel like it's the same for my running. Is I have to plan out ahead. I have to like be strategic. I have to get creative on different ways, because like for a while it was like, this is how I have fun. I have different themes. I do all of this, but that can get old and it wasn't working. And then it's just like, well, it's almost like easier to just like go down the intense route. And now like the piece that like a thought that's come into my mind after this Disney thing is like, and this is just my own insecurities of, okay, well, I've just done this like amazing thing that I'm so proud of. And I like really had a blast with all of it. Are people going to be expecting me to now be this joyful in every single race? And like, am I going to have to be like in costume every single race, or like this extra layer of, now do I have to like prove that I'm still like this funny runner? And that's a piece that I've like noticed those thoughts coming into my head already.
Thank you to Inside Tracker for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, I mentioned towards the end of last year that I just received my most recent results back from my Inside Tracker test, and I was really excited because I was able to prove after 1 year of being a vegetarian that my biomarkers were almost all optimized. There was a few that were slightly out of out of optimization. And that was primarily because I was taking a little too much on the iron supplementation side of things. And so I've backed off that, and I'm confident that my next test, I will be able to bring things in even more. Now, I love the Inside Tracker app. That is something I've been using so that when I get my blood work done regularly, I can check in and see how my numbers are changing over time. I can also get the recommendations I need to make the changes that are suggested based on my results. I get to see my inner age, which, by the way, is 25. This 33-year-old is very happy about that. And I'm able to see my progress. I'm able to make it nice and easy based on dietary requirements, based on my lifestyle, of how to make changes. Like for me, one of my changes right now it recommends is to try a new type of nut each week. I obviously have to stop taking my iron supplement, or did for a few weeks while I let my iron calm down a little bit. And I also am trying to work on my sleep, which is something that I really want to continue doing. So you, my friend, get a very special offer from Inside Tracker. You can get 25% off everything on Inside Tracker through being a friend of Running for Real. And all you need to do is go to insidetracker.com/Tina, insidetracker.com/Tina. That will get you that special offer, and it will allow you to see what is going on the inside. If you've had questions, or you've been unsure whether something just doesn't feel quite right, this really is the best service to use to really check in with your body and your health. I have been using this for many years, and I cannot imagine my life without it. Thank you again to Inside Tracker. Go to insidetracker.com/Tina to get that 25% off. Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that, about like, do you feel pressure? Like, you know, when you were in Boston, or just like you said, especially now, like if you're in a race and you're having a really bad patch, or let's say you really have to go poop and you're just panicking, like, oh my God, I'm going to poop myself in a minute. And then someone recognizes you and you're like, you know, grunt because you're like literally trying to like keep your body together. Like there's that thought that goes through your head that they're like, oh, now they're going to go to the internet and be like, well, that Brittany, you know, she's supposed to be fun and she da-da-da-da-da. Like,
yes.
Yeah. So that is something you are working through. I mean, that's tough because it does make you feel for celebrities in that way, because they always have to be in that, you know, they have that all day, every day. But yeah, it's difficult when, and yeah, you do feel like if you're the fun runner, the funny runner, that everyone expects you to be that all of the time. And we all know that anything that we have kind of a label for, or anything that we have been associated with, is not always going to be 100% true. So that's
totally
tough.
It is, yeah. And I think it's so funny. Literally at the finish line, I was getting ready. They like media went crazy, and there was one at the end that I was like, I was bent over, and I was like, you need to tell me like 3 seconds before I need to be on camera, because I'm about to poop myself. And then as soon as this interview is, tell me how long it is. I think it was like 2 minutes. I was like, I need to go. Cause I was like, not ultra friendly. Of course, when I was on camera, it was fine. And I was like able to pull it together, but it was like, I don't know. And then you start to like, I think you start to listen to different ways that people talk about, people that they know. And you're like, gosh, well, what would they be saying about me? Like on this one encounter, but I think it's just, again, so then like my brain goes down those like rabbit holes of worry. Like I'm such a worrier. I'm like, again, I have like this crazy imposter syndrome too. And my brain goes down like all of those crazy rabbit holes all the time. And then I just have to remember, like I've gotten really, really good at one of the things that's really helped me is meditation. And it's coming back to the moment of like, did I do my best in this moment? Or was I genuine to myself in this moment? Was I a human in this moment? That's all I can do, because I have to remember, like, I can control what I can control. And that's like my biggest thing is like, and especially as runners, we want to control everything because everything is out of control. And so for me, it's like just trying to remember those moments. But I mean, that's work and it's hard. It's not like I mastered it and I'm like, it's just so easy. No, like, and having fun. I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because it's like having fun isn't easy. I think that's a big message to put out there is it's like, it's very intentional, but also like you get tested on, okay, like as the weekend went by and as the media really started to catch hold of the story and like so many people were following, come marathon day, it was like, I have 3 wins, like, and now I got to go run a marathon against women on fresh legs. Like, okay, like, am I going to feed into the pressure? Am I going to have that mindset that I kind of had in Boston? Or am I genuinely going to just keep trusting my own like plan? Am I going to really try and work on that? And that was harder work to sit in that than it would have been to just like, let it go and just feed into all of it. So, yeah, the fun is work, but I mean, like anything that is really hard work, it's so much more worth it if you can just stick it out and stick through it. Did
you in that marathon have to fight against thoughts of just stay ahead of the second girl? Like, you know, there must have been urges to turn around. And when you are at the front of races, people always yell like, you got minutes, but then you also know, or seconds, you also know that, people are yelling to them like, she's only a minute ahead, or like, she's slowing down up there. Like, how did you keep those thoughts out of your head to like take it away from like, I'm not just trying to beat other women, I'm trying to do this for me?
Yeah, that was like, the marathon was the most mentally challenging of all of the races because of all of those factors. And I kind of anticipated those thoughts coming later in the race. Like I thought, you know, maybe around like mile 18, 19, I'll start to have to kind of work through those pieces. And it was like mile 10 that they started. So it was just like, cause I was in third place until mile like 9 or 10. And I had passed the woman who was in second. And I was like, at first I was like, I'm just going to draft off of her. And then I was like, no, like if you're going to do this, you're going to work. Like, you're not going to like, don't take the easy route. Mm-hmm. And I was like, if she drafts, that's fine. And she ended up not, but I kind of like was like, okay, like I have this spot. And I was like, great. My cyclist came up and he was like, you're in second. And I said, no, I'm in first. And he goes, no, I'm the second place cyclist. And I was like, no, there's no other female ahead. And he was like, yeah, she's like minutes ahead. I had no idea that there was even another woman in first. Didn't even have a clue. So this whole time, like basically I didn't pass her until mile 20. So basically for 10 miles, I'm having to battle in my head of, this sucks because I'm not going to get the win. And I've got to go chase down somebody that I don't even know where she is. She's not even in sight. I haven't seen her once. To like, nope, this is not why you are out here. And also like, just pick up the pace. But I was like, I can't, my like legs are so dead. Mm-hmm. So it was like, honestly, it was like mile by mile. It was this just like almost this dialogue, this commentary going on of like, of that. But I just kept coming back. There was a couple moments that I distinctly remember telling myself, like asking myself in that moment, are you enjoying this? And there was a moment that I was like, nope, I'm not, because all I was thinking about was going and chasing her down. So I was like, all right, then like look around. And then there was like a character or something like that. And I made it a point to wave at every character on every race because that was those were my like cues of like, remember, stay present, try and like, remember who's on the course. And then, I remember asking myself, like, if you were not going for a win, how would you be running right now? Like physically, what would your body be doing? And that was when I just like let those shoulders drop and really took that big breath and just like let my cadence just do what it was doing and just all of those different physical cues. But I mean, I won't lie. Like, yes, it was like, that was the day that things started to get like, okay, like this was my final test of, do you want to win this or do you want to run it your way? And then during that, it was like, if I don't win, how are you going to finish? And I just was visualizing myself coming across the finish line without the confetti, without the banner. And I was like, I'm going to be just as happy. And I'm going to like, because that's also part of it. And I had said from day one that my goal was not to win all of these. It was to enjoy it. And and I'm going to be true to that. Like I really will, even if I don't get this win. And, you know, but that was hard And especially for like thinking that or like that.
I know.
On.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because, that's not something that, again, typically you would hear from people. You see the end of the finish and, oh, that was, wow, you're amazing. Look how fast you ran. Look at what you did. But people don't even think about or don't ask about the rest of it, of what led to that moment, that it's not just that in order to win, you had to play it strategically. But as you said, when you do that, you also are risking your purpose of doing it. So thank you for sharing that. And I remember the same thing with my race. My goal at Disney, my goal was to enjoy it. And there was moments I wasn't. And like, thankfully, the music is blaring and it's playing Disney music. And I do remember at one point, I think it was playing, I want to say it was like Phil Collins, one of those ones from Tarzan or something.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, like, this is a freaking Disney song. Like, you're in Disney World. Like, stop it. Like, what are you doing? Like, you wanted to enjoy this and you hear the Disney music and you're not even doing what you said you were going to be doing. So, like, back off.
Mine was Hakuna Matata, and it was like right at the perfect moment, because it was like, no worries. And I was like, oh yeah. That's so funny.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. Okay, one more question about Disney quickly, and then I have one other area I want to ask about. How did you manage your suitcase on the way home? No one else is going to understand this, but those Disney trophies are freaking heavy. Like,
they're huge.
15 pounds each. Like, well, maybe not 15, at least I'd say they're 10. They're massive and heavy. What did you do with your suitcase?
That's a great question. So for everybody that doesn't know, when you win the half or the full marathon,
it's only the two. Okay, I thought there was four.
Yeah, luckily with the 5K, 10K, you don't get a trophy. You get these trophies, and they're amazing. And of course, I mean, Disney does everything Disney, right? It's like it's a legit, like, full on, very well constructed trophy. Mine right now on my shelf from 2018 is Donald Duck.
Yeah, mine's too. Yeah,
and I was actually nervous about that, because I was like, my suitcase was jam packed from the beginning. I mean, it had all my costumes, everything. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to even fit these 6 shirts in, let alone these trophies. Luckily, because of COVID, they didn't do an award ceremony. So they're actually shipping them, because I was originally like, I'm going to have to just buy a suitcase. But yeah, they're actually shipping them. And then there's talks that they're going to do a special Dopey one for winning it. So I'm like really hoping that
amazing
comes through.
Yeah, that's so cool. Wow, I that's awesome. I want to hear that. Okay, so from a very like happy ending message there, I just want to talk a little bit. I mentioned to you before we recorded, is there anything that you haven't covered that you think would be good to talk about? And you wanted to talk about some disordered eating patterns you had when you first went pro and even leading into the trials. Before we go into this, I just want to say from my experience, I think most professional and sub-elite athletes at some point work through this. But again, this is something that isn't talked about. And yes, I'm sure there are a few out there who totally have a healthy relationship, but it is difficult. So firstly, I want to mention just thank you for being willing to talk about this. But yeah, maybe talk a little bit to your experience there.
Yeah, I think it is something, you texted yesterday asking that. And I was like, this is something I don't talk too much about. And then last night I was at Run Club, and one of our runners had, like, all of a sudden we went down this rabbit hole of this, that she's really struggling with this, and she's injured. And we like found out it's like she just doesn't eat. And I was like, girl, like, and that was kind of my affirmation before this morning of, oh no, this has to be talked about. And I'm not ashamed of it, because it's like, no, like, we're human. And again, I think for me, and this is all just my experience, when I wanted to go into the elite world of running, you just have this different picture of what you feel like it's going to be. You see all of these amazing runners, and there's accolades. They look amazing. Like they get free product, and like they get to run in all these amazing races, and they get to have the world's most bougie experience. They don't have to wait outside, and all of these things that you put in your head that you think it's how it's going to be. And for me, it was like, I bet you that so many people see this, and I'm probably a culprit of it. But for me, one of the biggest things that I saw, and this is probably just my own insecurities, but it was like, everyone is chiseled. Everyone is so fit. Everyone is so thin. That's why they're so fast.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was like one of the first things. And I had struggled with like some disordered eating stuff throughout high school and college, certainly when I was racing in college, and things like that, because that was just how I thought it worked. And so that was kind of my biggest goal when I started racing elite, was like, if I can just look like everyone else, I will race like everyone else. And for me, that meant being like severely underfueled. Like I was telling this girl last night that I remember my last big run before the New York Marathon in 2018, I posted this photo and people had reached out asking me if I was okay. I looked how I wanted to. I was like shredded and I was like, I'm ready to race this. But the photo that I had posted, I could hardly make it through a 16-mile run. I was exhausted. I had like nothing in the tank. And then I got to New York and blew up. Like I like barely crossed the finish line. There's photos of me like collapsing and these like cyclists trying to help me because I had nothing in my system. And I kept trying to race that way, and finally had to work with my dietitian.
And thank you for saying dietitian, by the way.
Right. Not a
nutritionist.
Like
come up that point in so hard.
No, not a nutritionist, very registered dietitian. She knows what she's doing. Shout out to Amanda. And that it's been years in the making of trying to trust that looking like an elite. I remember I had to print out this mantra for myself, and I put it on my fridge when I first started working on fueling, that said, do you want to look like an elite athlete or perform like one? Yes. Because there's this big difference, and it's just like trying to convince, but the problem is it's trickling down from us as elites down to the regular runners. And I'm like,
and college, high school, which is the crushing
how
part.
do we change it? And I don't know if it's just talking about it more or being honest with it. And it's hard. Like talk about like, it's hard to have fun. It's also hard to like choose to fuel properly as a runner, and not analyzing your body on social media afterwards and looking at your race photos. Nobody looks good in race photos. You pick the one that you look amazing in. The rest of them you're like, who let me out like that? Who let me run this way? Or like all these different crazy things. But I think that's just a big piece that I've really been working through, but also really struggled with. And it wasn't just because I started racing elite, but it was definitely just kind of these pressures that you feel as you get into this world. It's a whole like realm.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And it's difficult because firstly, everyone is comparing themselves to people who have been running for many, many years. At that elite level, and their bodies do look different. But as you said, like, I think, I remember very much the same thing with, and it was actually one of the photos that circulated around of me when I first stopped running. There was a photo that I took after a 24-mile long run, and I was like, yes, that's it. That's the body I wanted. I've got it. And while I ran well in that race a few weeks later, 3 weeks later, after that, that's when the wheels fell off. And yet people don't really tend to talk about it until afterwards. And again, we've talked about this quite a lot, the intensity of the elite world, but also, as you said, this trickles down in that it takes a boldness to be able to say, when everyone else around you is saying, oh, I'm just going to have a little bit, or I'm just going to have this or a salad or something, to say, you know what, I actually feel like having this or whatever. And so that takes a lot of confidence. And if you're surrounded by people who you look up to, you're probably not going to make that decision. So that could go at the elite level, but that could also go the sub-elite, that could go at the competitive level. giving us the confidence to do that. But also it's hard. What I really find hard is when elite athletes or anyone says like, oh, well, I eat really well. I have like a kale, spinach, omelette for breakfast, and I have this. And in the afternoon, I have a square of dark chocolate. And that always made me feel like, damn, like if their treat is a square of dark chocolate, then like, what am I doing? And it takes so much strength to be able to say like, you know what, if I just ate one square of dark chocolate a day and I ate the rest like that, which I have done that kind of thing, I would not be in a good place mentally. And maybe some people can live that way, but for me, that's not how it works. But it's hard to go against that grain. And I do think you're right, by talking about it, that does help, because that helps people again to then look at the lens of your pictures and be like, okay, well, she still struggles with this, or to be able to see that, or just to kind of pay attention to what people are sharing and say like, okay, well, they only have a square of dark chocolate, but I wonder what's going on underneath.
Yeah. I think too, the thing that is in that exact same realm for me was thinking about, I was like, I'm eating, like, I don't have an eating disorder. Like, I don't have stress fractures, like all of these things. So in my head, I was like, I'm fine.
Yes.
But what I started to realize was how that there's this other kind of gray zone of just disordered eating. And I was starting to recognize, because I was getting told by my coach and my dietitian and my strength trainer, they were pointing out these patterns that I was just so wrapped up in that I didn't realize, like, just so obsessive about, so like when I had started working on fueling, my dietitian was helping me like, here are your meals for the day. Like, you're going to have full meals, and then you're going to have all these different snacks, and you're going to fuel on your runs. Like, it was just like constant fueling. Mm-hmm. And so then I created rules like, well, I'm really hungry, but my afternoon snack is 200 calories. So like, that's what I get. And I was killing it. And because we are these athletes, you give me that goal and I will nail it. And I was like, I killed it, killing my calories, even though I'm at like my 3,000 calories or whatever I was supposed to be for the day, but I was still hungry or something like that. Like, I was just putting rules and things on it, or like the biggest thing that my dietitian and I work on is that like, there's nothing that's off limits. So like, but in my head, it was like, okay, but like, I had already had this many carbs today, so I just need to eat more fat. And like, it was just starting to get so obsessive that, it was this, all I was thinking about was food, constantly. That was a big piece that I was like, oh, okay. Like, even though I'm fueling now, I'm really fueling, but like, all I'm thinking about are my rules that I've put on this, or, like the amount of time I was still spending in the mirror, checking like, just like, how shredded do I look? Or like,
I feel
all these things, or like over analyzing your pictures of all of that. That's why I've tried to stop racing in sports bras, is because that was one of my triggers. Was there was one time I had texted my dietitian and I was just like, I just don't feel like I'm fit. And she was like, what does that mean? And I sent her a photo and I was like, I just don't feel as shredded. And she was like, I can count every single one of your abs. And for me, just like times, abs equaled speed. So like, I would just get obsessive about how my abs looked, because that to me was like a sign of an elite runner, is like how shredded your abs were. And so finally we had to chat through that and just be like, that's not healthy. I have to put that away for right now. Like, I have to just kind of, that it's not working for me. So I have to like put this aside. Cause I did have even a race outfit for Disney of a princess in a sports bra. And I had to like choose like kind of at the last minute. I was just like, that just doesn't feel right. I feel like all I'm going to be thinking about either during the race or after is how I look. Yep. And I can't do that, because it's just like, it's too much. So there's just all these different pieces that I think the point of bringing all of this up is that there's still this gray zone of like letting people be aware that there still can probably be some really disordered habits that are there that need to be addressed, and that like at least I still struggle with, I mean, all the time. It's constant work on that front that luckily, fortunately, hasn't turned into this full-blown eating disorder at this point in my life. But it doesn't mean that there's still not struggles there around this body image piece and this way that we just are like talking to ourselves or treating ourselves in this crazy comparison with everybody else.
It's so hard. And I mean, there's still so much talk around it, just not even in a healthy way, or maybe talking through kind of some of the negatives of it in this way. But there's still a lot of conversations within media of what people look like, or how someone is looking. And again, I honestly think the competitiveness between, like we said, this, from my experience, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done with women supporting other women. And it's not made easy by the situation of limited scholarships and only limited places, and everyone's very close together. But while that is still there, there's so much, like you said, looking around. And I've mentioned many times before, doing the same thing as you, standing on the start line, looking around and being like, and genuinely myself thinking like, I'm the big one.
Yeah.
And now I look at pictures of myself and I'm just like, why did you feel that way? Like, it's so sad. But so just to, kind of bring it all round together with that, like how's your relationship now? Like, what do you do now when those thoughts come through? Because, they don't go away. They're always going to be there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember one run calling my dietitian, and I was so upset because I was like, I had come off of a really hard run. I felt terrible. And I had realized like I was either being really, really strict on like my fueling, or I was getting under fueled again. Like I was just kind of pulling back again. And she was like, Brittany, you know what? This is probably going to be something that you're just going to have to deal with forever. Like it's never going to go away. And that was finally like, oh, it's not this thing that I conquer. It's not something that I get over. Like it's just going to be here. And as long as I'm just like, okay, like you're going to sit in the back seat, you're going to be on this ride. You don't ever get to drive, but you're probably just going to be here. And I acknowledge that. But I think it's just having the trust in the people around me to let me know. Like I had a conversation with my dietitian, my coach, my sister, and a couple other people that are kind of in my like really close sphere of like, hey, just so you know, here's what really like are my triggers, and here's what usually sends me over the edge. Can you just be aware of it and know that if you're noticing these things, I'm going to be open to the conversation of it, because a lot of times you just get so wrapped up in it and you're like, no, I'm killing it. And then next thing you know, you haven't had chocolate or you haven't had a beer in months because you've told yourself in your head you can't, you're not allowed. So it's kind of things like that. Again, I've tried to stop posting photos of me in a sports bra, because personally it doesn't work for me. I have photos that I have posted and I feel like I'm like, okay, I'm doing a better job. Or like, I won't let myself sit on a picture. Like if I notice I'm like really, nope, move on, like turn the phone off, put it away or something. Things like that. Or like I've even made art out of it. So I have a piece of art back here that there was this one run. It goes through waves. It's like every training cycle, there's something that comes up. And I had called my dietitian and I was upset that I was just like feeling like I was just so out of control and just wanted all these different things. I was like, I just want a calzone. Like, I just want to have a calzone. And she goes, and you can blurb this out if you want, but she was like, Brittany, eat the fucking calzone. And I was like, oh, so I made this piece of art. It's Richard Simmons, and he's got a pizza background and he's standing on a weight and it says, eat the fucking calzone, of just like this reminder of like, stop getting crazy. So I've also tried to use it as like a constructive way for like making art or like something like that, of like just these reminders. But yeah, I mean, I think just having people in your corner and having good resources, and maybe even just like putting out there of just like, this is me. Like, I'm definitely like have issues with this and it's really hard. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I think it's all kind of all these pieces together.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And thank you for sharing that. And I think that all of what you're saying there can resonate with people across the board, because just the world we live in, a complicated relationship with food is part of the picture. That's part of the privilege that comes with the life that most people listening live. Yeah, I just appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty there. Okay, so just wrapping up here, what can people be expecting from you in the coming months, and where can they go find you to follow up with more?
Yeah. So my big goal for the year, which has been for the past couple years now, it's just gotten canceled, is I'm really working towards making Team USA for the World Mountain Championships. And that should be later towards the end of this year. So most of what I'm going to be doing the rest of the year, at least for now, is kind of teeing that up. So I'll kind of be hitting the trails again. And hopefully racing in Argentina in March, overseas in Europe in the summertime, and just kind of going back and playing on trail a bit more, maybe peppering in some random road races throughout the year. So I'm actually quite active on social media, but mostly just on Instagram. It's at funnyrunner26.2. My coaching. So my coach and I have a coaching brand. She coaches me, and then I also coach. It's called Mercuria Running. And we post a lot of fun stuff on there with all of our different runners and stuff like that too. But yeah, that's kind of what's ahead. I'm like, oh gosh, like I kicked off the year with a pretty big bang. Like, what am I going to do next? So yeah,
you have started off the year with a high bar, but as we've talked about today, your race results, your accomplishments don't make you the person that we love and appreciate. So as long as you keep that in mind, you'll be good. And you mentioned about your coach. Her name's Jen, or is it Jenny?
Jenny. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Jenny. Yeah.
Yep.
So anyone who is looking for a coach, I know a lot of people ask about that, especially if you are a woman seeking a woman. Go check them out, because I mean, she's obviously done a great job with you, but also keeping that fun in there, that joy in there that we talked about today is obviously one of her specialties as well. So, Brittany, thank you so much for joining me today. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure it's been really enlightening for the listeners. So thank you for your honesty and vulnerability today.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for having me on. I hope people enjoy it. I hope they chase their own joy. I hope they have a really great year as well. I'm just putting all of those good vibes out for everybody out in the running world too. So thank you, Tina, for all of this. It's so fun.
Hi, friends. Just a quick message to say a big thank you to the Running for Real team. While I may be the face of Running for Real and the voice behind the podcast, there are a group of people who are working tirelessly to provide everything that runners could need within our community, to make our community stronger, better, and evolve and grow and learn from one another. We are working really hard to make Running for Real the place we believe it can be within our community. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone on our team. That is Victoria, Stacy, Sandy, Sally, Maria, Kelsey, Kat, Jeremy, and Erica. I appreciate each and every one of you and the hard work that you put in. Now let's get back to the show. Wow, I so appreciate Brittany there for her vulnerability and honesty and just that conversation we had. I hope that was insightful for you to just hear a bit of some of the underneath stuff that we don't see on the Instagram posts, or we don't see on a lot of the celebration moments. So I hope that was insightful for you. Actually, that was quite cathartic for me to talk through that, to feel like some of the feelings I'd experienced, I wasn't the only one. Because again, those conversations don't happen that often, although I am thankful to have come across a few others who I have been able to talk to about the realities of the situation. So thank you to Brittany. Make sure you go follow her if you don't already, and go cheer for her in her future. I hope she can continue to just keep being that bright light she is, because she is someone who's just very special in our world and much appreciated. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for today. Now, remember, if you go to tracksmith.com and use code TINA15, 5% of your sales will go to Runners for Public Lands, which is an environmental nonprofit and a wonderful organization. So I really appreciate that you are supporting them with every purchase you make from Tracksmith. I also want to thank Athletic Greens. You can get that 1 year free supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs for anyone in the UK, Canada, Europe, or the US. By going to athleticgreens.com/Tina. And finally, to Inside Tracker, you can go to insidetracker.com/Tina to get 25% off everything on their website. I am a massive fan of Inside Tracker and just so appreciative for their support in monitoring my health in a, I hate to say healthy way, but in a mentally stable way without that obsessive component that Brittany and I talked about today. Thank you so much, my friends. I will see you on Monday for a together run and then next Friday for a regular episode.